Welcome to the Women Changing the World podcast, a podcast on a mission to bring you some of the most amazing women I know who are doing incredible things to generally make the world a better place. From corporate sustainability to straight up magic and everything in between, you'll meet the real life humans who are birthing the new. I'm your host, Liz Best, and I'm here to amplify the stories and voices of women who are changing the world. Hello, welcome to another new episode of the Women Changing the World podcast. I am so excited that you're here. Today we are sitting down with Danielle Azoulay, who is the founder and CEO of the CSO Shop. It's a fractional chief sustainability officer advisory firm that helps companies transform sustainability from compliance obligation into a strategic driver of growth and resilience. Danielle is amazing. She's someone that I've had the joy of getting to know, especially over the past couple years as she's been building the CSO Shop. And in this conversation, we talk about so many things that feels so true about entrepreneurship, but also just about like being a human in this world in this moment. We talked about rebuilding and evolution and self-trust, how we build that muscle, the power of community, and having people who we can ask our like stupid or not so stupid questions to as we're calling in new things and moving through transition. We talked about how we meet this moment and how we think about culture change and the advice that we wish we could give our younger selves. It's just really a breath of fresh air to hear her story and how she got drawn into sustainability and climate work and all the different experiments, pivots, and iterations that she has undertaken since. And without further ado, I will let you get into the episode. Hello, I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast today, Danielle. I feel like this conversation has been like years in the making. Welcome to Women Changing the World.
I'm so thrilled to be here. And I feel like the things that we're going to talk about today, you and I talk about with each other all the time. And so now I'm just glad to record it and hopefully help other people who are on a similar journey. So thank you for even thinking of me for this. I love chatting to you and really happy to be here.
Such mutual admiration. I feel like I always walk away from our conversations with so much to think about. And I just feel so excited and honored to get to share this magic with other people. So maybe before we jump in, for people who don't already know you, say hi, introduce yourself to our listeners, give us a little snapshot at what you're up to these days, personally and professionally.
Hi, everyone. I am Danielle Azoulay. I am the founder and CEO of the CSO Shop. If I had to rebrand it, I might name it something different, but less like I had to spell it. My consultancy is a fractional chief sustainability officer advisory services company. And basically what I do every day is I take my 20 years of in-house experience and I've packaged it in a way that can help companies who haven't started their sustainability journey yet or are doing a refresh or need some internal help to figure out how to grease the wheels and move forward on things. And because I've done this work in so many different organizations and structures, I bring a lot of experience and sort of insider knowledge and ideas that can hopefully build that capacity on sustainability and social impact that we all want to see. That's what I do. It's kind of a unique offering, I hope, and I'm told. So it's definitely niche. It's definitely not for everybody, but the people and the companies that I work with really benefit from this type of service and strategic thinking. So it's pretty fun, actually. I get to do the parts that I loved doing in-house. I kind of just get to do that every single day, and it's pretty great.
I love that so much. And it's been so cool to watch as you've been building and evolving the CSO shop. And it's so relatable. I'm like, wouldn't we all name our business something different if we were starting today? We need to start a support group for like, I wish my business had a different name, but I can't rebrand every 5 minutes. Um,
Totally. It is what it is at this point, you know?
Totally, totally. Well, I'd love for you to share a little bit of your story with us. I know it's been such an interesting one with lots of twists and turns along the way. And so, invitation to share a little bit more about like how you came to be here, how you came to start CSO Shop, and like what that 20 plus years before this moment has looked like.
I always like hesitate to take you way back because the story really does, when I think about like my aha moment, go back to when I was 12 years old, living in Miami. Was born and raised in Miami, and I survived Hurricane Andrew. And you know how after these like major weather events, they make t-shirts that say, I survived Hurricane, whatever. I had an I survived Hurricane Andrew t-shirt. And I really did. You know, I was in my house when our roof blew off. I was 12 years old at the time. You know, I come from a middle class family. We had insurance, we had family support, and it was still really hard to rebuild a life after a major weather event. And I think that was the first time where I was like, oh, wait, the environment and like humans are intrinsically connected, right? You know how kids like kind of just have these innate things that are they're so good, you know, and empathetic at identifying. And as we get older and we start thinking about things through this like linear lens, we lose that a little bit. And so I decided I really wanted to focus. I loved the environment. I wanted to like be an activist. And so I saved the whales. They're saved, by the way. Liz, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. That was me. No, I'm just kidding. It really involved in sort of like ocean initiatives, being in Miami and surrounded by, of course, the ocean and then the Everglades, you know, my metaphorical backyard, and just like kind of fell in love with nature in that way and engaging with nature. And it wasn't until I had to choose a major in college where I was like, do I want to work with a nonprofit? I'm not sure that's like where I am going to offer the best skill set. Like that, I didn't think that I could, you know, and that's not to discount what people in NGOs do. It just wasn't for me, you know? And at that time, there really wasn't another job within the environment. Like, you know, you were an environmental engineer or you were working in conservation or what have you, but there wasn't like a way to bridge the gap between the private sector and public sector. And so I majored in the other thing I felt passionately about, which was music. And I worked in the music industry for a while. I did that for a few years. And then my other aha moment is An Inconvenient Truth came out. And I was working at Universal Records, and my friends teased me because they were like, when I used to go visit you, you basically, your desk was in the like drinks cupboard. Like I would have cans of soda in my little tiny office cupboard. That's where I worked. But I really felt compelled and drawn to this movement because of that moment and because of that sort of calling of An Inconvenient Truth to pivot. And it's not easy to pivot from music into sustainability. And so I really wanted to go back to school, and I got my master's in environmental conservation and education. And then I happened to be working as an executive assistant to the president at Calvin Klein Jeans. And once I finished my master's, pivoted into, you know, the environmental team at PVH, managing responsible chemicals management for the global supply chain, which was like an unbelievable first job and exposure to the sustainability industry and like what's possible, you know, around the time the Greenpeace detox campaign started. And that gave me this really specific sort of expertise on supply chain sustainability impacts, particularly around chemicals management. And that opened a door for me at Marc Jacobs, which was like a childhood dream come true for me. Working for Marc Jacobs, like the best designer ever. And I did that for a few years. And then I didn't want to get pigeonholed in fashion. And I wanted to learn a different consumer product. And I was just like, I'm like kind of a glutton for punishment, like so many impact professionals are. Luckily, a job opened up at L'Oreal. I moved over to that role where I led sustainability and social impact for L'Oreal in the US. So basically taking the global strategy and activating it across all offices, warehouses, factories, R&D facilities, and US-based brands, and figuring out how to make it work, right? And that was an amazing experience. And I think that what I learned is that people at L'Oreal are like operating at the top of their game, which is amazing, but also exhausting. I got burnt out by that. And after COVID, I was like, okay, we need a change, and was really interested to see how retailers were doing it. Because as a supplier of retailers, I was seeing a lot of opportunity to get closer to the consumer, to really activate that decision-making moment and figure out how do we really orient that around sustainability and social impact. And so took a job leading ESG and sustainability at Bed Bath & Beyond. The CEO at the time really wanted it to be core to the transformation of the company. And I was doing a lot of very cool work. And unfortunately, there was an activist shareholder takeover of the company. And it was like a very rapid downhill spiral. It's where I learned intimately that if a company is not on strong financial footing, trying to get the attention to do the work on sustainability, it's like impossible, right? But what's great about that experience is I had a good severance package, and it gave me about 6 months about what I want to do next. And I was like, well, do I want to jump into a different consumer product and do the same thing over and over again? It's like 4 jobs now where it kind of felt like I was doing the same thing, right? And I was, feeling a little bit burnt out by the uphill battle, the internal bureaucracy. That challenge is real. And I have a lot of love and heart for the people who do the work in-house, because it's hard. It's hard. And I just was like, you know what? Maybe I just need a break. Maybe I need to do something different. But what am I going to do? I have a very weird, specific skill set. Like, if I don't do in-house, what am I going to do? And I started thinking about where I drew my inspiration, what got me excited. And I love working with founders. I love people who have big blue sky vision. They want to create something new. They want to create something from nothing. And those people who, if you can get them to care about sustainability and social impact and weave it in from the beginning, I thought that there was a really unique opportunity to do that. Unfortunately, founders don't have a lot of money. So you also have to balance with how do you feed yourself? But I was lucky. I had one anchor client that I was able to launch my company with and build from there, see what worked, what didn't. Like you said, I certainly probably wouldn't choose the CSO shop now. I have to spell it out as C like cat, S like Sam. Oh, it's not the best name. And I'm okay with that because I'm a big proponent of getting something out into the world and iterating on it. It's not going to be perfect, but if we waited to do anything until we had the perfect set of circumstances, we'd never do anything. So, I got my crappy website up and I just started putting it out there. And I learned so much. I learned about what was resonating with people, what wasn't. I was tweaking it as I went. And then after a year and a half, I had enough money where I could actually pay someone to do the cute branding. And now I love my logo and I love my website and I love the optimistic feel of my brand. But I don't think I could have gotten there on day one, right? I just didn't know what I was. I didn't know who I was and what I was offering. So it was an evolution. Where I am today, I needed to go through that painful process and those steps of just putting something out there, being vulnerable with the world and seeing what the reaction was. And I'm really happy that I did.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing your story from the beginning. I think it's so interesting to hear the twists and turns that brought us here and the random events in our life and interactions that we have with things like climate change that just have the potential to set us on a totally different course. And it's so cool to hear how you've like really thoughtfully pivoted throughout your career and how you've really taken such an intentional approach to like getting information through action with the CSO shop. I think so often we can have this tendency to think that we need to have all the answers figured out in order to do something. But like my favorite piece of entrepreneurship advice that I got when I was getting started is like, you just have to try stuff and like learn as you go, which can be so uncomfortable. It would be so nice if we could just like have the perfect plan and execute the plan and then like get a gold star and be done.
Totally. Or a cookie or something, right? Yeah, for a job well done. But it's just not the way it works. I mean, it might work like that for some people, but it's just not the way it works for me. And, I appreciate you saying that it seemed like linear and intentional, because when I was in each transition, it did not feel linear and intentional. It felt chaotic. There's that Joan Didion quote, we tell ourselves stories to stay alive, or something like that. I might be butchering it, but basically it's like everything in hindsight looks like, of course, you ended up where you ended, right? It was inevitable, but in the moment, it felt nuts. And so I appreciate you saying that. My husband always laughs at me when he hears me tell my story, because he's just like, it sounds very polished now, but it didn't feel polished in the moment. And that's totally true. But, here we are. Here we are.
Totally. Well, and I think to that point, like I know something that you and I have chatted about recently is like, the difference between starting a company or starting a business and then like keeping a business going and evolving a business and like getting past, the first stage of like, our friends and existing network to like the next stage of like growth and self-sufficiency. And I know the CSO shop, I think it just turned 3, right? Which is like such a big milestone.
Yeah. I'm just turned 3 on February 14th on Valentine's Day is when my registration came through, which is kind of funny. Yeah, you're totally right. Like at first, it's like you can lean on your friends and your network to sort of help you land that first client or like referrals. But there is a point at which, and it seems to be around the 3-year mark for most people that I talk to, where you have to take a step back and like reevaluate things, right? And I don't know if the well runs dry or if you just like have your sea legs, so you kind of are ready for bigger projects or like different types of clients, right? Or within that, like this was true for me within that 3 years, I was able to really home in on what I wanted to do, right? And what industry verticals I want to focus on. I think brands like have this amazing opportunity to influence culture. It's what I loved about working at L'Oreal is you are part of people's most intimate moments of the day. And it's like, you're there, like those brands are what they put on their body and on their hair and on their face and as a form of self-expression, and like how important that is to infuse sustainability and like ethics into that moment. It's a magical responsibility and a magical opportunity, right? Same goes for fashion brands. People are making a conscious decision about how they want to express themselves and show up in the world, and to be able to layer sustainability into that and like have people be able to express, this is the kind of person I am based on what type of clothing or designers or secondhand or rented or, the different myriad of options that exist today. That's a kind of a cool gift from a branding perspective to be able to be part of someone's life like that. And I just started thinking like, actually brands, as cultural influencers. And then, well, if those kinds of brands, like surely then like athletes and artists and musicians and like those industries also need help, right? Because those are the industries that obviously drive culture. And then the synergies between the two are really fascinating. So that's kind of where I focus my time, is like this idea, this umbrella of cultural change makers, and figuring out how to link culture with consumer decisions and sustainability and social impact. And like that sort of like triad is really fun and fascinating for me to think about. So, that's where I focus my work.
Totally. Well, that's so cool. And I feel like it's so beautifully spoken, like where you're putting your energy right now. I'm curious if there's anything you can share about what that thoughtful, intentional, like pivoting, like how did you approach that process? What has it looked like to like really take the clarity that you've received over the past 3 years of doing this and really translate it into the direction for your business?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and I think it's also to just be clear, like I don't have a master's in business, right? I didn't take classes in entrepreneurship. I didn't know the first thing about business development or bookkeeping when I started this journey. I actually come from a family of two entrepreneurs who advised me never to be an entrepreneur because of the uncertainty around it, or like there is risk, but there's risk, the instability anywhere. I mean, talk to people who get laid off from big companies all the time, right? So I feel like the work world isn't what it was 40, 50 years ago when our parents or grandparents were in it and you worked for one company for your life and you retired there with a pension. We are moving in and out of in-house, out of house. Like being an entrepreneur, I feel like is today and has to be a natural extension of career journey because we got to feed ourselves, and it's just the reality. So I have had a very steep learning curve, things that maybe other people had a lot of experience with was really new to me. And actually that's where GCC and Growth comes in, right? Is like, thank God I had that magic mind and that outlet and that cohort of like the people I could ask the stupidest questions to and get like the best advice, right? And so it's important to like find your people and make sure that you have people that you can go to and be like, they all have the same questions. And it's really important just to like fast track things. And I remember when I came to you and I was like, bookkeeping, like QuickBooks, like what do I do? I really hate it. And you're like, you don't need to do that, Danielle. Hire someone to do your bookkeeping. And I was like, great, thank you for that. And sometimes you just need that permission to be like, oh, okay, I don't have to, because we have in our minds that we have to do every single piece of it. You don't have to do every single piece of it. So now I'm really grateful for Alan. He's my bookkeeper. Thank you, Alan, for saving me from QuickBooks. That intentionality and that pivot in my 3-year mark is something I'm kind of still like figuring out, because also what I've realized is I can have a really clear idea of what I want to do. That doesn't mean the market is ready for it or like that there's a need yet. And I think sustainability people, impact professionals in particular, are so good at having a crystal ball and being like, this is what we're going to need in 5 years, right? And I think that's a skill set and that we really take for granted. So that's like a blessing and a curse. It's like I'm always like thinking ahead in that way and wanting to build for it today. And then I don't know if it's actually a need. So I'm still, in this sort of in-betweensy place where I am doing some project work because not all of the brands that I engage with need fractional support or are ready for that or understand it. It's like conceptually I didn't think that hard, but it's actually kind of a unique structure to communicate to people. The people who get it think it's cool, but the people who don't get it are like, I don't get it. So it's making sure that my business has a balance and that I have an on-ramp for brands and clients, no matter where they are in the journey, even if I know what my ideal client is, and hopefully I can get them to where they could take me on fractionally within, a certain time. But some of these business development conversations will go on for like a year and a half before they materialize. And sometimes they never materialize, right? And that's okay. Hopefully they'll pass your name on to someone else. Or what I'm seeing now is I'll establish relationships with people when they're at one company and then they move on to a different company and then they call me, right? So, it's really interesting to see how this kind of evolves as a service provider.
Totally. Oh my goodness. There were so many gems in there. I love how you talk about so many of us don't start businesses to know how to run a business. Like so many of the entrepreneurs in my world, it's like we start a business because we want to do a thing with a certain kind of person. And then it's like, oh, wow, now I have to like build a business in order to like do the thing that I wanted to do when I started. I love how you articulated that. And I also think it's so smart and on point. I know we've talked about how like as impact professionals or sustainability leaders, like we are kind of like fortune tellers and futurists with our crystal balls. But people then as like a business owner, you're trying to like sell a thing. We have to talk in the language that like our ideal client, dream client sees themselves in. And certainly like I think that can often be easier said than done when we're like, no, but I have this thing and it's going to like blow your mind. But like now I need to distill it into like exactly the problem that you have. And like, I mean, I know that's something I've been doing a lot of work on this year is like, okay, how do you take something that's a feeling or like an outcome and like really get concrete and speak in the people's language who you are here to serve? It's constantly evolving. There's not, I think to your 3 years point, it's like, I've definitely noticed that like 3-year cycles in my business where it's like, also the world has changed so much in 3 years. You think about where we were in 2023, so different from now.
Totally. It's so weird because I used to say to people when I was in-house that like, sustainability is executing sort of this static program in a dynamic environment, especially when you're making consumer products. You know the what's concrete and the inside is chaos, and you have to figure out how to weave the what into all the things, right? And that's the how. And, now it's almost like we're in a moment where the what is even unknown. The what is dynamic. So we're taking this dynamic, rapidly evolving thing and trying to apply it in a dynamic, rapidly evolving environment that's also reactionary, right? Because of tariffs, because of whatever the macro situation is. And it's almost like there's like two trains. And it's like, where's the connective tissue? How do we find the same stop and board each other's train, have that conversation and continue on together, And so it's definitely a challenge for sure. To your point, I think it's constantly evolving. I think it will be constantly evolving.
Yeah, I feel like at least for me, when I like started entrepreneurship, I actually talked about this on the last episode, the interview that I did, which of me being interviewed, which was like, I feel like there were all these people who were like selling like the magic pill formula for like, if you just figure out this one thing and you like get your offer and you like run it on repeat and then you like make it passive and you make $1 million, like the end. I feel like people were very much like selling that on Instagram circa 2020, maybe before, and I wasn't paying attention. And the longer I've been doing this, the more like there's totally fundamentals about running a business that are true. But the idea that anything is going to just like be like set it and forget it in a business, especially in like the worlds that we occupy, is just like harmful, at least, and it's just not how it works.
Totally. And it's like the last thing you want is for your business to be stagnant, because then you're becoming farther and farther from the zeitgeist, from the moment, from what is the need, right? We have businesses to meet a need, and at least our, service businesses are, right? And so you have to be able to be nimble enough to understand where the market is going and figure out how your offering fits into that. If you're a B2B and you want to work with those kinds of companies versus like individuals, it's just a different thought process. You have to just be considering the macro all the time and what that means for how you build. My business is like very low overhead. I run a really lean business. I don't really have an interest in like being a, 100-person agency. I don't think that like what I offer could work in that size, So I'm comfortable knowing that I'll be boutique and really specialized in terms of offering. And, it's sure maybe like harder to acquire or whatever, but I'm happy doing what I'm doing right now.
Hello, it's Liz. I am briefly interrupting this episode with a little PSA that if you are enjoying this conversation with Danielle and feeling like you would love the opportunity to learn from her and be in community with other inspiring women like her, the Girls Club Collective might make sense for you. Our community is the place that like-hearted, values-aligned change agents come to build confidence and momentum through relationships. And we are so lucky to get to work with leaders like Danielle. Inside the collective, you'll have the chance to learn from her on how we actually remove greenhouse gas emissions beyond scope 1 and scope 2 from our supply chains and products, and so much more. If this is speaking to you or resonating with you and you'd like to learn more, I would definitely invite you to check out our next Girls Club Collective Community Power Hour, which you can find via the link in the show notes. Back to the episode. I love that so much. I feel like there's so much self-trust too in what you just said, both about the business that you actually want and in like how we trust our own instincts when it's time to evolve. I'm curious, when you think about like the self-trust involved in being an entrepreneur and running this business, what have you found helpful for really tuning into what it is that you're wanting personally and what you feel like is in the zeitgeist collectively?
There is a level of self-awareness that goes along with being an entrepreneur that I think you don't need in other disciplines or, in other roles, within careers. And so I think when I was first starting and I was still sort of like, well, how am I going to keep the lights on? Like, how am I going to pay my bills? I was talking to a couple people who started their own sort of sustainability consultancies or impact consultancies, and none of them had the depth of experience or expertise that I have. And all of them had way more self-confidence. I said to one of them, hey, like, how do you do this? Like, how do you have this level of confidence? And he said to me, Danielle, you have to trust yourself. You know that someone else would hire you to do this job in-house if you wanted to go back in-house. So you should trust yourself to be able to do this job in the way that you're envisioning it with this structure and see, and I mean, I'm pretty type A. I like stability and I like to know where things are going. And this has challenged so many of those types of traits for me in a great way, right? I feel like I've grown exponentially because this is uncomfortable in ways that I could never have predicted, and also fulfilling in ways that I could never have predicted, right? Because it's like all you. So, when you land a big client, or I got to go to the NBA offices, there's a part of me that left like in-house and I was like, I'm completely irrelevant and nobody cares about what I'm doing anymore. Who cares what I'm doing? And there's like a moment, the evolution that I had to go through. I was like, you know what? It's going to look different, but maybe I'll get access to some cool spaces still. Maybe, when things happen, it's like those moments occur and I put them on Instagram, and it's like, I should have more faith in myself. And I think back on those words a lot, like trust yourself, because someone else was going to trust you to do this work. Trust yourself. And, it's kind of like a mantra at this point.
Yes. It's, so much easier said than done, right? But I love that reminder of just one of the things I talk about entrepreneurship all the time is like, it's like wherever you go, there you are. And I think entrepreneurship really forces us to face a lot of things about ourselves that, like, I know for me, certainly when I was in-house, it was easy to point to all the external factors that were contributing to the thing. But then when I started working for myself, I was like, oh no, it's me.
It's like that Taylor Swift song, right?
Yeah.
It's me. I'm the problem. Oh, okay. It's so true. It's so true. That lens has to pivot. And also it's like, I had an experience this week. It's like, I had a client that didn't want to pay me just because they didn't want to pay me. I did the work. I delivered it. They just didn't want to pay me. And so it was like the mental energy of me having to come up with a resolution. Because even when you're a consultant in BCG or McKinsey or whatever, if a client doesn't pay you, you as a consultant still get paid. That goes off to like an AP department or the legal whatever, right? That's all you. You're chasing it up all the time. And so I also just came to terms with the fact that it's like, I don't have to be a jerk about it, but I can be firm. I can stand my ground and be tough and like feel good about who I am at the end of the day, because it doesn't feel good to be a pushover either, right? So it's like I said, this is challenging me in ways, pulling up insecurities that I'm faced with, that I'm really having to like put the lens back on myself and be like, okay, girl, how are you going to deal with this? There's no playbook for this. How are you going to get paid? How are you going to get this done? And it's kind of fascinating, just like an outsider looking in. It's pretty fascinating what we have to put up with and deal with,
Totally. But I do think so much of like, there is so much potential for self-trust every time we like do something we've never done or had to do before, and we like get through it, even if it's not perfect, even if there's like a million things we would have done differently or we decide we'll do differently next time. It's like every time we get through it, we're like, okay.
I did that.
I did that.
I did that. Now I'm going to go lie down because I need a nap. That was hard. I'm going to take a bubble bath. Totally. And there's something gratifying about that, that you're doing things you never thought you'd have to do and you never thought you could do. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Totally. Well, and I want to like jump back to, you alluded to something early on when you were introducing yourself about like sort of how you're thinking about impact in 2026 and like what it means and where there's opportunity. And I feel like I've gotten lucky to have gotten to talk to you one-on-one about this, about like kind of like, and I think so many people are asking these questions of like, what does impact even like mean right now? What is happening to our profession? Like, how do those of us who care about showing up for a better future, like actually do that in this moment with everything that's happening from like hiring perspective, a layoff perspective, like, I could go on and on. I know, how are you thinking about the concept of impact or like the kind of work that those of us who've maybe been in this field for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, like how we translate that into the chaos that we find ourselves living in right now?
It's hard. This is a hard moment. And I think that we have to acknowledge that it's heavy in a way that I know that every function within every department of every company is having a challenge to deal with right now. I think impact professionals, it hits differently because we are inside work who we are outside of work. We carry that with us. We're mission-driven people. We care about things like equity and anti-racism and gender equity and climate resiliency and human rights and all of these things that are in this moment really being challenged. But what I'm seeing is that they're being challenged at the federal level, at the international level. But in communities, this is what people care about. And I think that we knew this all along, right? I remember going to factories in Kentucky and Arkansas, meeting with local legislators in red states, talking to them about solar panels and renewable energy, and they were totally open to it. Or like water improvement programs, or getting people outside for mental health benefits. The political temperature at the federal level, it feels different when you're in community, when you're sitting across the table and talking to someone face to face, right? And I believe that we can still build that capacity if we do it from the ground up. I really do. And I believe that what we're dealing with right now is temporary and terrible. And I don't mean to diminish its terribleness by saying it's temporary, because it sucks. And I feel it every single day. And I know you do too. I worry about the world that we're going to be even in 3 years. What is this country going to look like in 3 years? I don't know. I'm sad for children or teenagers who are growing up in this moment and are thinking like, this is the way society has to be, because it's not, right? And I think that's like up to us to be like, there's a different way. Mentorship right now, kids who are trying to get into college and helping to shape people and be that outside voice of reason or a different voice. I think it's like really important. It's something that I've been looking into doing with my oodles and oodles of free time, of course, when we can't stop having the conversation and we have to have hope that this is going to be different one day and we're going to be uniquely prepared. We need like a movement that's driven by love. And that is not hippie bullshit. That is real. That is the only thing that's going to be more powerful than the rhetoric that's coming into our brains every single day, is building that and being that, right? And so I don't know if that gives people hope or if people resonate with that. I don't know what impact is going to look like. I think it's going to be much more culture driven than it is data driven. And I'm okay with that because I think that's actually how it sticks. And that's how you change people's hearts and minds. The data is going to be the compliance piece, the culture piece, where we're really transforming society and or systems, and whatever your system is. That could be a company, that could be a city, a small town, it could be your neighborhood, it could be whatever. That's, I think, where the culture piece is going to have to be embedded, that cultural transformation, which we always thought of as a soft skill, right? Internally, we're always like, we don't need that. We need to know what our data is. What's measured can be managed, right? That's like the thing that we've been talking about for the past 20 years in sustainability. No one's going to take us seriously until we can like really manage it. But you know what? Nobody's going to give a crap about continuing to measure these hard things if the culture isn't there to support it. And so we have to be able to do two things in parallel.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Also, I'll just say for anyone listening who wants like more on this topic and what language we use to change culture, the interview I got to do with Freya Williams on this topic was really interesting, about just like, what do we say? Like, what are the things that resonate that are like not as political? Like, because there are, I think to what you were sharing, Danielle, it's like there are some things like love that are so universal. And we've talked a lot about this on this podcast in general, like how ways that we've done ourselves a disservice with like not having the storytelling and not helping people see themselves in what is happening. And I think it's just going to be really interesting to see. I mean, like the data and like measuring it will, I think, continue to be important and a piece of this work. But for a lot of us who are more on the like soft skills, influence, culture change, storytelling side of things, what that looks like and what like career or job title we have in trying to affect that change. I think, especially with everything that's happening with AI, which like, I can't believe it's, minute, whatever of this podcast, we haven't been talking about AI.
I know.
But like that's so human. That's
right. Exactly.
That's so human.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Like, just to reiterate, I think on that point, you're so right. And one thing that I've noticed is, particularly with my story, the hurricane and the blah, 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 like surviving the hurricane, you got to make it personal, right? Nobody can take that away from me. I know what it's like to live through a major weather event. You know what it's like. People who lived in California last year know what it's like to survive wildfires. It's like these things are starting to become so common that it ends up being the thread that binds us together, right? It's like what I didn't want to happen is happening. And also maybe that is the opportunity to share experiences with each other and understand how it's, I tell my student, I teach at Columbia, and I tell my students, like, you can't spell environmental without mental. Like, you have to think about the mental health component of this, right? And the feelings piece. Because even though we're doing this within corporations and in business, corporations are made up of human beings, and human beings care about a lot of things. And it shows up in lots of different ways, within their day-to-day job. And so you just have to, it's relationship building,
Totally. Oh my gosh. Well, I could talk to you for hours. I feel lucky that I get to talk to you. So I'm going to ask a couple quick hit questions before we
Fun.
wrap up. Womp womp. But jumping off of what you were sharing about your students, I'm curious, what advice, if any, do you wish that you could give your younger self? Like, what advice would you most want to give past Danielle?
I think that really being like a functional business expert, if I could go back, I would probably figure out engineering or something. I would be in a factory understanding how products are made or product development, and then weaving in sustainability on top of that versus being in the sustainability team, which is limited to influence, right, to other decision makers. So I think you got to think about where the decision makers lie within an organization and be that person. And that's what I tell my students.
I love that. It's such great advice. What quote or reminder is inspiring you today? And I feel like you've shared a couple already, but I'm curious, what's on your metaphorical or physical Post-it notes right now?
Well, I think, I love the be the change. I love the Maya Angelou quote. I feel like I live my life, do the best you can. And when you know better, do better. I love that sort of sentiment around you're doing your best. And that doesn't mean that someone else's best, right? So it gives you that permission to do the best you can every single day and then to keep learning and keep growing and keep evolving. And that's what life is about to me.
Absolutely. Well, okay, because this is the Women Changing the World podcast, I have to ask, if you could change one thing about the world right now, what would your thing be?
Oh my God, the patriarchy. The patriarchy. We're ready for a new world order that's centered around community, love, mutual understanding, collaboration. I think we're getting tired of this hamster wheel that we've been on of war and capitalism. And, it's just exhausting, isn't it? I think we're ready for a change. I hope we are. That's what I would change. I think small.
I'm with you. I am so here for a matriarchal future. Yes.
Yeah.
We can't top that. So I feel like on that note, I will ask for people who are listening who want more Danielle in their lives, which I don't blame them, what is the best place or are the best places for them to follow along with you for updates on all the things that you're working on, both personally and through the CSO shop?
Well, you could definitely follow the CSO shop on LinkedIn, and you could absolutely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn, even though I don't post every day. I'm always checking LinkedIn. And then if you wanted to be my friend on Instagram, I post a lot of feel-good baby animals, and I try and keep it positive and light. Some days that's hard, but Danielle, Danielle, A-Z, like zebra, L, like Lima. Would love to hear from people and grow my own network and stay in touch.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. I feel so here for all the baby animals. So appreciate you making time to share more about your journey with us and what you're thinking about this year. There's so much more I could have asked you. So there will probably have to be a part 2 of this conversation in the future. But for now, I just want to say thank you so much.
I would love that. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Danielle. It's been such a pleasure to sit down with you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Women Changing the World podcast. Please rate and review the podcast wherever you're currently listening to it, and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. You can find me on Instagram at liz.best, that's lis.best, and you can find Girls Club Collective at girls_club_collective. You can also find us on LinkedIn by searching for Liz Best, that's my name, LISBEST, and Girls Club Collective. Join our mail list by visiting the Girls Club Collective homepage and scrolling down to the bottom. You'll be in the loop on upcoming events, retreats, and opportunities to make magic with us, and you'll also receive a monthly love note from my heart to your inbox. I am so excited to keep in touch.